Hello, everyone, and welcome to our FindSpark event. I would love to get some hellos from you all in the public chat on the right. Please give us a hi or a hello if you can hear me and see me. Always good to make sure. I know this is the closest we're getting to in-person and live interaction with new groups of folks. I always like to check. Fantastic. We are so excited to have you here. As you can see, starting off easy with hellos, but we would love if everyone could introduce themselves in the chat. These FindSpark events are not just a way to gather great advice and perspective from our panelists, but also for you to all connect with each other. So I shared here a little bullet list of what you can share in the chat to connect with other attendees. So of course, share your name, share your industry or role or company or what you're aiming to get into. It's always fun to hear where you're watching from, and include a link where we can connect with you. As you can see here in the chat, if you include that HTTP www stuff in your link, those are easily clickable links, so you can all go through the chat throughout this event, connect with people who might have things in common or different interesting perspectives and experiences. We really, really encourage you all to connect with each other here, not just in the chat today, but outside of this event as well. So welcome to our event. This is our second installment of job hunting, networking, and work during COVID-19. And I am just curious, I'm always curious, I would love to hear, for how many of you is this your first FindSpark event? And how many of you are returners? So I just shared a poll in the audience, and you can let us know if it's your first time or you're a returner. Looks like we've got a really great mix here. I love seeing that. The great thing about FindSpark events is that there's always a great mix of new folks and returners as well. So it's a really wonderful community to connect with others and see people consistently. So about FindSpark, if you've been to an event before, you've heard me say this as well, but so we're all about setting up early career professionals for career success and connecting you to incredible companies. And so we have hosted over 250 programs since we started. We have over 32,000 members across the nation and some outside of the US as well, hundreds of different schools represented. And again, the thing that separates FindSpark is that we are a true community of folks who are really invested in helping each other move forward within their careers. These are just a few real people from the FindSpark community. These are people who have found jobs, internships, mentors, finally gone outside of their comfort zone and started networking more, maybe launched a website for the first time. We know you are all coming here from very different places with different goals and different starting points, and we are just happy to be a small part of your career journey. These are just a few of the incredible employers that FindSpark has worked with, employers that, again, are really interested in connecting with diverse talent. And to share a little bit about my background and my why, when I was in college, I felt like there was a real lack of career resources, especially for those interested in pursuing creative fields or just fields that weren't so structured and ladder-like. And really on top of that, what I also found was that networking just really doesn't come easy to a lot of people, and there weren't a lot of great resources out there either, specifically for college students, folks who had just graduated. And I was lucky enough to see how important it was to create a strong network early on. And that is what we are all about doing here with FindSpark, is really emphasizing and creating opportunities for you to create a strong network for yourself early on in your career. So in addition to running FindSpark, I'm also an adjunct professor at School of Visual Arts and FIT. Shout out to any FIT or SVA students in the audience. And I also have my certificate in diversity and inclusion from Cornell. And I do lots of speaking engagements from college campuses to events. So before we get started, one thing that I want to do during this time, because we are going through some really difficult times, like the most difficult time we have faced as a country and a planet. I want to get everyone into the best possible mindset. So I would like everyone to take a minute now to think of a time where someone helped you in your career. And I would love for you to think of a very specific instance where somebody made a connection for you, gave you really good advice, gave you their time, their energy. And I want you to just take a minute to think about that experience of being helped in a really genuine way, and to just let that sink in. To just let that feeling of gratitude fill yourself. And take that gratitude with you throughout this event. Now, some other things that I would love for you to do before we get started. So one, turn off your devices. So I know you might have multiple screens up, multiple monitors, multiple tabs, but please, you're here now, you're here live. You have the advantage of being here to connect with others and our speakers and really hear from them. It's so easy to be distracted and try to do more than one thing at once, but really just be here, be as fully present as you can. So please X out of everything else. If you're a phone note taker, run and grab a pen, grab something to write with, grab a piece of paper, go old school for this, so you can really be fully present. And if you do need to leave, we have a limited number of spots. So if you are going to leave the event, please be sure to fully X out so we can free up a spot for somebody else as well. All right, and also, yes, you are here in person and you get to benefit from the live experience of connecting with others, but that doesn't mean you can't share your favorite things and what you're learning with other people. So please do share your favorite tips and takeaways, and shout out our speakers and FindSpark on social media. We are at FindSpark on all channels, and you can also use the hashtag FindSpark. And I really, really encourage you to connect again with others in the chat. We'll be prompting you throughout the event, but we also encourage you to share your own experience, of course, to ask questions. So if you have a question, we will save time for questions. And again, we're super grateful that the speakers are mostly able to stay after 3 o'clock as well if there are more questions. So ask those questions in the question box. And also, we have a wonderful guest with us, Amber Young. She is in the chat today, and she's going to be sharing resources and links throughout, as well as you ask questions or just to go off of what some of the speakers are covering. So look for a lot of great helpful links throughout as well, and she'll also be making sure we get to as many questions as possible. And again, make sure to put those questions in that specific question box so we don't miss them in the chat. All right, and today we're talking about really just how everything has been affected during COVID-19. And again, we will save questions for the end, but I want to emphasize that majority of the questions that I'm going to be asking as a moderator today have come from you all in advance. So thank you for everyone who shared your questions with us in advance. We're going to get through pretty much all of them. But at the same time, even though we have a really diverse panel here with a range of perspectives and experiences, of course, there is no one silver bullet answer for anything we're going to go over, and things are changing super quickly in this time. And so just know, it's only the experience of these 4 folks, but we're going to do our best to give you as much guidance as possible and some really actionable takeaways and things you can do to, do your best during this time. And some other things to just keep in mind before we dive in. Number one, it's okay to be disappointed. I'm pretty sure that everybody's any sort of semblance of plans to an extent have been changed because of COVID-19. And it's okay to be disappointed by that, no matter how big or small you think that might be, no matter what it is compared to what other people are going through. You need to allow yourself to just be disappointed and be bummed, because it's happening to everyone. But just know that for this event, we're really excited to bring you the opportunity to connect with other people in real time. And although FindSpark is all about giving real talk advice, we want to give you an optimistic approach of how you can again, do your best during this time and focus on what you can control to the best of your ability. And we all know that it's about to be, and already pretty much is, the most competitive job market that it's been in many, many, many years. And that does mean that things are going to be more challenging and difficult for most people, but it doesn't mean that you will not get to your next goal. It just means that you might need to go about getting to that next goal differently than you have planned. And that's what this event is all about. All right, so with that, I'm very excited to introduce our panel. So I'm going to bring them up one at a time to just share a little bit about who they are, what their role is, a bit about their background. So I am going to start with Israel, who is joining us from the New York Times to share a little bit about his background.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Emily. So my name is Israel. I'm a senior manager of talent acquisition at the New York Times. A little bit about my background. I originally went to college for acting. Then I fell into the HR space almost 10 years ago. And now I'm in recruiting and I'm a person. It's really about it.
Great. Sure. Great. All right, I'm going to bring up Sacsha now.
Hello, I'm Sacsha Flowers. Hello, can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Hi, I'm Sacsha Flowers. I am the owner of New Phase Creative Consultancy. It's a new consultancy that I just started geared towards creatives to help them with their career development and just really focusing on growing within their careers. I had originally started off in fashion design and worked in the industry 10 plus years, then decided to do something else. So I'm one of those career transitioners where I wanted to stay attached to the industry in some way, but not the traditional way with production, development, tech design that you can go into. So I found a passion in helping people and decided to go into advising, where I worked for Parsons School of Design. I helped BFA and AAS fashion design students. And then I went on to work for Alexander Wang as a recruiter myself. So I did creative talent management. It was a combination of recruiting, but then also counseling and working with the employees that they have there on any employee resource type stuff. Thank you for having me.
All right, Barry, I'm going to bring you on next. And I encourage you all to connect with our speakers on LinkedIn. So they are all on LinkedIn, and if you go to the event page, you can find their LinkedIn pages, and they are very happy to connect with you. And of course, we'll share a little bit more about their tips on connecting with people like them and recruiters, especially during COVID-19. All right, we're just waiting for Barry to come on screen. But in the meantime, please continue to introduce yourselves in the chat. You guys are all doing a great job sharing a little bit about yourselves, so please continue to do that. All right, Barry, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna switch over to Josh. And Barry, maybe just do a refresh and come back and try again. But I'm going to switch over to Josh for now. Ooh.
Hey, everyone. I am Joshua Huff, just Josh. I have been in recruitment now for almost a decade, working at a variety of the companies, the general thread being advertising and marketing, that space. I'm currently with Rakuten Americas, which most people know as, it used to be known as Ebates, Rakuten Rewards, and been with that company now for about 2.5 years. Found my way into recruitment from kind of like a more overall operations role, and really found that I enjoyed, much like the other panelists here, helping people succeed both in their career goals and there within the company. So I'm really glad to be here to speak with you all today.
Great. And I know refresh, so I'm going to come back to him, give him a second. But a question I just want to ask every panelist, and we'll start with you, Josh, since you're already on screen, is how has COVID affected you and your role? And I think it'd be nice to just, kind of remind people that we're all in the same boat here. If there's a particular challenge you've been personally facing or say in your career and how you're working to get through it.
Yeah, I think a big thing, I'm fortunate in that my company was kind of built for this in a way. Obviously, a lot of the work we do is already, since it's digital work, it's done very virtually. We've always been kind of flexible about where we are and when we work. And so that transition kind of like en masse was pretty seamless. I think one challenge that they've all been trying to help us with is the line between work and home. And I think that's been a really universal issue for people who are continuing to work through this and are working from home is, when does the day begin? When does the day end? I think it's compounded for someone like me who works. I wake up and I'm already catching up from working with my partners in the UK. And by the time I go to bed, my folks out in San Francisco are still working. And so really, I think encouragement from the company at a very high level to respect, various time zones and where people are. So the people I'm working with understand my workday is roughly 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And having respect for that and understanding has really helped. I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge, because for me, I'm just a person who is generally always I try to be on and be pretty responsive. And so I have tried to really make myself step back and call it a day, each day.
Yeah, oh, that's great. All right, I'm going to bring on Sacsha next. If you could share maybe something that's a particular challenge that you've been working on throughout this, and how you're getting through it and handling it.
So it definitely has been a challenge, especially being a business owner and being a coach and trying to help people within this space. Definitely have been seeing a lot of people affected by getting laid off or furloughed from work, which is hard in itself, but to be so rapid, especially within a creative space that I serve, that's been the most challenging part. And then trying to figure out the best services to offer, also at a rate that's low, so it's not asking too much. Because at the end of the day, if people have to choose between paying for coaching or food on the table, they're definitely going to pay for food on the table, and I would encourage them to do so. So at the end of the day, it's really just that. And then, outside of being a business owner, I actually, to make ends meet, have to work a second and third job at times as well. So just being on the other side of that lens and looking for work is also challenging in itself too, figuring out, what's the correct industry to look for? Is it something that I want to do? It's interesting. It's a survival mode right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Israel, what's a challenge that you've been facing in particular? And if you do have a question at any point, everybody, again, there is a specific question box. So be sure to put your questions in that box so we can make sure that we get to it at some point. Ooh, Israel, saw you there for a second. Let's see, here you are. Okay, you're good.
Yeah. So one of the, what both Josh and Sacsha mentioned about their challenges, we're all in the same bucket here. I guess specifically from a recruiting perspective for the Times, one of our main focuses in what we are seeing in the market is trying to really just maintain a positive candidate experience for all of our candidates, and trying to find ways to make the interviewing process as seamless as possible. Internally, we've all had to adjust to work from home, and so it's been it's been good, and it's been, you know, different, right? But the Times has been really generous. They've given us all work from home stipends to enhance our work from home experience, which is really nice. We're adjusting and pulling it along, but I think it's the combination of trying to make the work from home experience a little bit livelier, while at the same time, like, thinking about the candidate's perspective and creating a great interview process, knowing that the times that we're in now with the current state of the market.
All right. Well, and I'll throw my next question to you, Israel, which is, you know, a lot of the questions we got from our attendees is, you know, how has networking and digital outreach, you know, purely digital outreach at this point, how has the etiquette changed? And, you know, in particular for you as a recruiter, and then Josh, I'm going to throw this to you as well. You know, how is your just perspective on what you respond to, what you don't respond to, what you have the ability to respond to when it comes to, you know, LinkedIn messages, or just general networking, not necessarily applying? How have things changed? Like, people want to know, how do I network more empathetically, maybe than they have before?
Absolutely. I've spoken on a few panels, most recently with Out in Tech, on some of their hiring panels, and my LinkedIn inbox is huge right now. And so even at the beginning of this panel, I had my LinkedIn open, and then I saw all these notifications. And I was like, oh, this is something I can close right now. But I honestly do try to answer every single inbound that I receive on LinkedIn. Sometimes it'll be a month. Sometimes it'll be a week, because I'm actively hiring for that role right now, or it's approaching like mid stages or final stages. So in terms of maintaining that networking, you know, it's obviously reach out to a recruiter, or who you think would be associated with that role. Do a little bit of research in terms of titling and familiarize yourself with the organization's titling structure, and like try to find who would be your potential manager or who would be your potential peer. And those are easy, or I would say like a best practice to follow now, since we're losing the face-to-face interaction.
And Josh, what about you? Has anything changed with the way you're handling, you know, responding to people, and what, as a recruiter, what makes you actually take the time to, say, respond to somebody more than a general, like, nice to connect?
Yeah, I mean, I generally will accept pretty much anyone who extends, you know, that they want to be in my network on LinkedIn. I believe that's what it's built for. It should be a big world where anything I post, or if I have a job that could be, you know, good in general to share, that's where it's going to go. And so, you know, to that end, nothing's really changed. I would say certainly, like Israel, there's a lot, like the outreach in terms of like specifically wanting time with me, or wanting, you know, kind of attention around what I can do for a person at Rakuten or otherwise has like tripled. And it's just impossible along with my workload. I would say the most important thing is focused outreach. I have to say a bit of a pet peeve is just like very generic, just like, hey, could we jump on the phone and talk about opportunities at Rakuten? Well, no, we can't. I need to, like, what is exactly that you want to get out of that conversation, like, that I can help you with? You know, and it's almost too easy for someone these days to do just a little bit more research to figure out where we might connect, or what direction I can point you in. I mean, that's something my company is very open to. My recruitment team at Rakuten is incredible. Like, if someone reaches out and they say, I'm looking at, you know, engineer roles on your tech team at Rakuten, I would just love to work at that place. I'm in this geography. I will point them right at, you know, Jane or whoever it is on my IT that would be the best person to connect them to.
Yeah, I feel our advice has always been through FindSpark to be specific. And I think it scares people to be specific, because they think if I'm specific about what I want, then maybe I'll miss out on some other type of opportunity. But I think especially as things get more competitive, you have to be specific, because people are they're going to have so many applicants. They're going to want the person who is really the best person, or has really shown with their transferable skills they could be the best person, and done the most proactive outreach, right?
Yeah.
And Sacsha, I'm curious, so you've given, you know, so much advice over the years in your different roles. So, you know, as a creative yourself, and then as someone giving advice to college students through your work at Parsons, and now as a coach, has any of your advice changed because of what's happening with COVID-19?
Yes, I would say specifically within the area of how you reach out to potential employers, kind of similar to what was spoken of earlier, you have to be very specific in what you want. But to add on to that, what's changed is that you have to be aware of the situation that we're in right now. And I'm not going to say just for COVID, it could be any devastating situation where the market's involved and, companies are laying off and things like that. So I would say just be mindful of what industry you're reaching out to, how you're reaching out to them, what person you're reaching out to. Make sure it's the right person, be specific in what you're looking for. And that's definitely going to help with the research that they do. I would also say jobs that you're applying for too. If you are really paying attention to the industry, you'll get a better understanding of, okay, what are some of the roles out there that I know companies are going to be actively hiring for, and how do I want to pitch myself to that company? It's I know normally, coming in as a creative or designer, you would go in like, oh, I really want this creative design job. But if it's a job that's not necessarily remote right now, and companies are trying to figure out how to make it remote, how else can you approach them on more of like a digital way of working with them? So that's what I would say, and being mindful of the situation and the positions and opportunities that are actually out there and where you could fit in.
Right, so research is even more important than it's ever been, because you don't want to come in asking about something that obviously doesn't exist anymore,
Exactly.
or is a huge issue and that sort of thing, right?
Yes.
And Israel and Josh, question for you both. People were asking things related to, the job that I was going for is not necessarily what I see being super likely anymore. Maybe that job has canceled, or there's less of those jobs, or those jobs aren't going to come back for a while. Say, for instance, people who wanted to work on the Olympics, like I wanted to intern on the Olympics, whatever. So there's always been the question of applying for roles where your experience is not an exact fit, right, with transferable skills. What are your tips for people who maybe, that ideal role for what they wanted to go for next maybe doesn't exist anymore, or they don't feel as competitive? Like, what are your tips as a recruiter for, how to, do you advise that people sort of change what their goal might be because of the current situation and that sort of thing?
Josh, you want to go first?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I think right now, as you were saying earlier, things are changing, and they're changing quickly, and who knows how long they're going to change. So making a pivot right now is a tough decision to make, and it's also, what do I do? I mean, I wish I had the right answer to this one, but I think you give a great example in mentioning the Olympics, for instance. Now, I only hook onto that because of the event space I think of. And I have a number of friends, like personal friends, that work in events and hospitality, and oh my goodness, what does that even look like for the next year to two? And so kind of watching them navigate this, I think this is a great time. One of them in particular that I was, kind of friendly advising, is to go back and enrich yourself in other areas or ways that you might be able to work in. So he's gonna I think it's, I'm gonna say it's Harvard. One of the schools, and I'm sure a lot of them do, have all of these free course programs that are just like, they're incredible. Obviously, they're taught by some of the best in what they do. And we have time. I mean, even those of us who are working have just a little bit more time in our days. So it's a good time to kind of like hone in on other things that you might want to do that may be adjacent or maybe not be adjacent. But I think at this point, it's a bit of a wide net situation where you kind of throw things at your vision board. What looks decent to you? What looks like something you might want to pursue, and kind of take it from there. But this is a really tough place to be in at this time.
Yeah.
And FindSpark has a great COVID resources article that Amber can share. It's our pinned post. We've been consistently updating it, and it has a section of professional development that's free, basically. So free courses, free videos, that sort of thing. So it's a really great time to take advantage of that sort of thing. Israel, do you have thoughts on that sort of question?
Yeah, two things. Number one is there's this other organization. I just got this email from them the other day. Codecademy is what it is. But they're offering a free day of training, and they're partnering with a number of other e-learning companies and other companies in general. anyways, that's just another resource. FindSpark, again, another great resource as well. And so, but I would say making a pivot right now in the market is going to be tough. There's over 20 million who apply for unemployment. So regardless of whether or not you want to make a pivot or how you're applying, take a look at your resume, take a look at the job description, and start correlating your experience to that JD. Everyone will have great experience in a particular role they've done in the past, but on a one-page resume, we only have some bullet points to get to. So do your due diligence, look at the JD, and start crafting out a little bit about how your experience correlates with that. It could involve having multiple resumes. Another thing is also having a cover letter that can showcase your skill set beyond just your resume, which I know in the past, well, I guess before COVID, cover letters were sort of like, should I do a cover letter? Should I not? It's been a candidate-driven market in general. But now, like the market has shifted quite rapidly. So I think a cover letter could actually really enhance your candidacy right now.
Great. And for those of you who don't know the recruiter lingo, JD is job description. Israel throwing out the acronyms at us. But good transition to Sacsha. I'd love to have you work off of that and share with us some of your biggest cover letter tips, especially for folks in our community who are going for more roles that are, say, involve creative or media or writing, not necessarily like banking or pure tech. Oftentimes it's required a cover letter. So what are your biggest cover letter tips?
So I can give a point of view from as a coach, and then also when I was recruiting at Alexander Wang, the ones that really stuck out to me the most. I would say anyone who really adds a bit of personality in a creative industry, we want to see who you are. We want to get a little bit of a idea of, your personality through that cover letter. What can you play up that you've done recently? Even take the situation we're in now that really made you stand out, whether you were making money for it or not. And how did you adapt to those times? So we want to hear a story. That's your place to really sell yourself. If you're a writer, oh man, give us a sample writing of what you're doing just to kind of pique the interest. Then from there, it makes us want to look at your resume. As a recruiter, it would make me want to look at your resume, see exactly where your skill levels lie. What I like to say and how to break it down, or at least how I break it down to my clients, is I'll say your cover letter is your story. Invite me in. Let me know why you want to work for this company or in this position. Who are you? What are some of the things that you've done that you could play up a bit? And how can I get in contact with you? Then your resume is really just a succinct bullet point of all of your experience. Think of it almost like your timeline, a quick snapshot of how I could get an idea of what you've been doing and how you've been doing it. And the interview, that's really just sealing the deal. It's really to get your foot in the door. I want to see you in person. I want to see how you interact. I want to see how you fit the company culturally. So those would I try to coach my clients on to do. And when I was recruiting, those were the things that I was looking for.
Yeah. And I see some questions popping up in the chat, like, really, people read cover letters? And, and FindSpark, we've worked with, hundreds of recruiters, and I've done so many panels over the past 10 years, and not every single recruiter will look at cover letters. A lot of times at the larger companies, they're going to check that resume first, for sure. That's going to go through the applicant tracking system, just like the cover letter. But, some obvious things, make sure if they ask for a cover letter, you sure as well, you better submit that cover letter. Whatever they're asking for, they definitely want. And again, in creative fields, a lot of times they do want that cover letter because they're looking to see that creativity come through. And also oftentimes in smaller companies, they're more apt to potentially look at cover letters, or mid-sized companies versus say like the Viacoms and the NBCs that just get so many applications. Sacsha, you brought up a good point, and I'm curious for Josh's perspective on this, in terms of what people can do on the in-between, besides just say education. That's a big thing that you mentioned. What are some other things so Sacsha mentioned putting things on your resume that you've done that you didn't necessarily get paid for, right? And we're big believers of that at FindSpark, and me personally, like things that you can do independently, like side projects, however that may sort of whatever that might produce. A side project can mean a lot of different things. Do you have any specific examples of things you've seen on people's resumes that weren't official roles but were experiences that you felt were really impressive and that helped somebody land a job, especially maybe if it was in replace of a standard kind of typical experience like an internship or full-time job?
Yeah, for sure. I think, and as Sacsha would probably agree, in the creative field, I mean, that's huge. I mean, people, and it's terrible, but a lot of times you are asked to do things literally for the experience. And not that I advocate unpaid internships by any stretch, but the idea that perhaps your friend is starting a nonprofit or your friend is trying to get their own, side gig off the ground, and just, for example, a creative who's a graphic designer or a copywriter really trying to cut their teeth and get more experience, in those fields. I have seen some really fantastic work in portfolios that was not necessarily professionally directed, just in terms of it wasn't for like, a major advertising company or a major brand. It was literally just work that someone who's incredibly talented did for either for a passion project or for someone that they particularly cared about, the work they were doing. That's a field where that's kind of specific. I think it gets tougher and tougher to do in other capacities, whether that's client service or I think of like operational roles like office management and that kind of thing. It's a little harder to to do pro bono work in that case. But certainly, if you're in a line of work where it seems like you could enhance your experience and enhance what I'm going to see when I look at your resume, by doing some passion projects and working with people that you really care about, that work also feels really good, and it can really it fills your soul, which I think is important, especially like in these times. I say go for it.
Great. And now is a good time with so many people being laid off at the same time or in between work. You have more potential collaborators, right? So creating a project with other people, right, looking to enter your field. And I think being creative about it and doing things like, for instance, I'm thinking about all of the virtual events that are happening and fundraisers and things like that. You mentioned like office manager, that's a little bit harder, right? But anything with production or organizing, right? Like you can get really creative. Hello, hey. Barry. So glad you got on with us. So Barry, if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do, and then I'll get to some questions for you.
Okay, sure. For the last 7 years, I've been an interview coach for individuals. I've trained over 1,500 individuals to interview effectively. I also do executive coaching at organizations and leadership training in organizations. Prior to that, I was vice president of human resources for Lloyd's Bank. Before that, I was vice president of human resources for Lehman Brothers. And I have over 30 years of corporate human resources experience at other investment banks and commercial banks in New York. Just one other thing, I've interviewed, while I was at Morgan Stanley, I've interviewed over 6,000 job candidates from entry level all the way up to CEOs. So that's my background.
Amazing. So obviously, the question I'm going to start with is video interviews, right? There are no in-person interviews happening anymore, and doing well at a video interview or phone interview is super important, and it's much different, right? You can't feel the energy in the room. There can be tech trouble like we just experienced. So what are your tips tips for video and phone interview tips?
Importantly is having a good level of energy. It does come through on the phone and over the video. And oftentimes, particularly entry level that haven't interviewed a lot, or when people are nervous, they're very stiff and robotic. And people want to hire nice people. They want to get along with you. So you want to make it a conversation. Do your part to make it a conversation, not a stiff interrogation. So smiling, moving your body, still using body language over the phone, believe it or not, even still smiling. Just be a very friendly, let your personality shine. Very important. That's one of the biggest things I recommend. So have good level of energy, be very positive, and just be very outwardly and positive. That's the best advice I could say. Yeah.
And how has the dreaded question, tell me about yourself. So tell me about yourself, right? I feel like that's the one that really gets people down the most. in general, that question specifically, but again, with video and phone, it's a little bit harder to read cues, right? To know sort of when to stop and when to keep going. So what are your biggest tips for tell me about yourself, answering that question, and anything just that is different now when you're on the phone or you're doing a video interview in terms of sort of knowing when to stop?
Well, I tell people to use a format, and I offer a format for every question you need to answer. Tell me about yourself. Don't get fooled. It could be tell me your background, take me through your resume. It's all pretty much the same. So I tell people to follow a script and a format. Don't memorize it because you don't want to come across rehearsed. But the format, for example, for tell me about yourself would be first talk about your experience, okay, starting from the most current, then segue. Segue is very important, meaning in addition to my experience, and then give them 2 or 3 technical expertise that you have. Very high level at Excel, very quantitative, things like that. So first your experience, then secondly would be technical skills or your education. I have an advanced degree in this and that. So, and then segue to your personality. And segue means in addition to all of that, as a person, I could tell you I'm a strong leader, I'm highly collaborative, give them 3. And I'm a strong leader, highly collaborative, and highly analytical. And you end with that because that, believe it or not, is the most important thing. You want them to hear the most important thing at the end because that's what separates you from other people. And your entire answer has to follow the job description. The biggest mistake candidates make is I'll say, tell me about yourself. They'll tell me about the sun and the moon. Has nothing to do with the job. I mean, I had someone talk about her parents where they met before she was born. So make sure your answers relate back to the job description. So talk about your experience, but give them just enough to want more. Don't kill them with detail. Just very high level. Currently, I'm working at, give them 1 accomplishment, and only go back 5 or 10 years. Don't go back 20 years, okay? So my experience, currently I'm at this company, this is what I've accomplished, and make your accomplishment related to something they want you to do in the job description. Then you segue, in addition to that, I have an advanced degree, I have a certification in, that comes from the job description. And then pause, be very friendly and say, and furthermore, as a person, I can tell you, and that comes from the job, everything's in the job description, you don't even have to make it up. I've had people, the job description says we need people good on teams, and they say, oh, I like to work individually. So that's a very common mistake. Match it to the job. So that's what I would suggest, using that format. Experience first, certifications, education second, personality third.
And I would love it. That's a great thing to just kind of prompt everyone in the audience. I'd love if everyone would share what if you're going for your dream job description, maybe one you applied for recently, everyone can share 3 of their biggest personality traits that you think would be relevant to your next job. Good exercise, something to chat. What are those 3 keywords like Barry just mentioned? And Israel, we actually got connected via LinkedIn because I saw that you had shared about how New York Times was switching over to remote onboarding, but would love to hear some of your tips on video interviewing. And then also, once you do land that job, because a lot of this training and starting your job is starting, all remotely and on video, your tips for being successful once you get into that job as well.
Absolutely. So with video interviewing, we at the Times have collected a number of best practices and have shared internally for hiring managers and interviewing teams. So those are all distributed to them. With that said, I also do prep calls with candidates prior to them reaching video interviewing stages or final stages. They're all video interviews, no one's on site. So some of the tips that I've been giving them have been proving pretty successful with them. The way that we're measuring it is during debriefs, assessing the candidates' video interviewing capabilities. Some of these tips, and I'll quick run through, but number 1, make sure to have strong Wi-Fi connection. Or as a backup solution, have your phone handy. There's always a conference line to that video meeting to quickly dial in as a way to self-troubleshoot. Like this show's initiative right off the bat that you know how to self-troubleshoot. B, because we're losing the face-to-face interaction, there are other opportunities here in this very odd time to be interviewing to lean into the video interviewing process. So whatever video platform you're using, whether it be Zoom, Google Hangout, there are other capabilities within the video platform, whether it be the chat function. There's a present now function on these platforms. So if there's an article or a link to support one of your answers, feel free to drop that article or link to the interviewer. This is going to help establish and create a stronger rapport that we're otherwise losing in a face-to-face interaction. Along with, if there's a particular project that you've done in the past or work that you've done in the past to help support your answers, lean in and present now. Take over the interview and start presenting your work. Like, what a great opportunity to promote your work through that area. So for onboarding, everyone here is going to get a job. Once you get that job, it's going to be great. And what the Times has done to but we get connected when I shared, I think it was a Digiday article on our virtual onboarding. But what's unique about the Times onboarding is we've actually always offered virtual onboarding. We have 6,000 employees, over 6,000 globally. There's over 1,700 in the newsroom, covering over, I believe 179 countries around the world. So we always give an opportunity for folks to either come in or conduct their onboarding remotely. So we've always had a strong foundation in place. With COVID happening, we began to evolve and iterate on it a little bit more. So new hire equipment is mailed in advance. There's now virtual team meetings, virtual lunches, but overall the programming of, which I believe is about 3 days of onboarding that every new hire goes through, is all done remotely. That's really
yeah. And just one other question while you're on screen is, I know you've done a lot of diversity inclusion work in the past within your different roles and prior to where you're at now. One thing that's been on my mind, and I think has been on some candidates' minds, is not people who are in situations that are not optimal for video interviewing. Maybe not even super optimal for phone interviewing, i.e., they're in a place, their house, their apartment, where there's other people, there's not super great service. You can't even go to a coffee shop to get good Wi-Fi, right? Or know that you'll have some quiet. It's a bit more challenging. So do you have any tips just in terms of phrasing those sorts of concerns to recruiters if you're in the process? Like, how might you bring up the fact that, they said they want to do a video interview and, on that day, you just don't feel confident that, you have the right space for it?
Absolutely. I would perhaps check their career site to see if they have a diversity statement on the bottom of their career site. And so feel free to just be very transparent with the recruiter or the hiring manager, whoever you're working with, and just say, hey, I may not have the technical abilities to conduct this interview on this time or date. Can we push it back, or can I find other resources? And if that's unsuccessful, feel free to utilize their diversity statement, which should speak on their diversity and inclusive interviewing practices. So if they have a resource that they can lend to you to conduct interviewing, because if the company is interested in you, they're going to want to invest in you. So feel free to ask that question. It's something that we have on our career site. But that's a really great question, and I actually would love to hear what everyone else has to say about that.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, I have a question for Barry next. So in terms of follow-up, right, that's a huge part of the interview process. What are your tips with follow-up now that things have changed? So, maybe before, you've given the tip that you should ask, what should I expect as the next step? But, are there any sort of different tips that you're giving people as they get to the close of the interview because of COVID-19 and there's, a lot more uncertainty than there has been in the past?
Well, some of it is similar advice I always give is, don't waste the time, that moment at the end, to say, what's the next step? It's really, they don't report to you. It's not up to, to you to ask that. I prefer, instead of saying that, you want to make yourself seem more desirable. You don't want to come across desperate. People want what they can't have. So at the very end, instead of saying, what's the next step? You say something like, this has been great. I'm looking forward to hearing from you again. it's very suggestive that you will hear from them again. Because what's the next step doesn't do anything for your candidacy. It doesn't make you a better candidate to ask that question. It makes you a better candidate to demonstrate that you're interested and you're looking forward to next steps and that you're confident about it. You want to give the aura that you have other offers going on. The most confident candidate has 2 or 3 other offers. Those are the toughest ones to get. So that's what I'd recommend instead of next steps. Then after that, I always prefer very polite, I'm just writing to let you know I'm still interested in the opportunity. Full stop. Because that just jogs my memory. Instead of, why haven't I heard from you? It's been 5 weeks. Don't do anything like that. It's just very polite. Just a gentle reminder, I'm still here. I'm very interested in the role. Sometimes even I'll let you know as I get other opportunities, or you're my first choice implies you have other choices. So little tricks that can make you sound like you have other things going on, they better jump on you now. You see what I'm saying?
That's great.
So that's what I'd recommend there. And it's unique. It's different than other people.
That's great. And Sacsha, with working especially with creative folks, and we have a lot of creative folks in the community, what are some things that you've seen people do, or you maybe recommended or encourage clients do to be more creative in the application process to really stand out, right? Because now more than ever, people cannot just submit via the application tracking system and just that's it. You need to network, you need to follow up or do, creative things on social media, personal branding. We haven't really touched that yet. So do you have tips on how people, say online or just through networking or creative ways, can do more than the average candidate normally does in the application process?
Yes, great question. I often at times, before I would always say utilize any type of social media platform and LinkedIn as much as you can, but I would say do that even more now. And say, let's take you through the process of applying for an opportunity. Say if you find an opportunity online, you're following this company that you really love, follow them on LinkedIn, see what they're talking about, see what their HR team is posting on their site, especially in times like this. How are they responding to COVID? Maybe there's certain things that they're working on, and there's conversations and dialects that are happening on that platform or Twitter or any platform that that industry or company uses. Get involved with those conversations. I would say, in addition to following up with the recruiter and who the hiring manager, whoever you've been in point of contact with before. To me, those are the best ways to stay engaged. And I feel a lot more employers and employees that work for the companies are being very engaged, especially now that we're virtual in those platforms. So I would say do that. From a creative standpoint, kind of going back to that, I would say, what are some of the things you're doing to sort of make a difference that you can promote on those channels and those services? So that way companies can see what you're doing as well, and you can virtually share that and they can follow you and see what you're doing. One of the cool things that just kind of wrap up, a couple of classmates actually that I had started doing in response to this situation, they were in the fashion program as well, is they decided to do a GoFundMe where they are designing hospital gowns for the doctors and nurses. And they've been getting a lot of funding to do that. They've been getting press behind it. So all of that stuff they can add to their portfolio and wheelhouse of experience. Again, it's not about profit at the end of the day. It's about what are you trying to do to add to your portfolio, and how are you looking at the times in a situation and adapting to it.
That's amazing. And Josh, I'd love to hear from you, creative things that you've seen stand out, either on resumes, on applications. I think hearing specific examples like that of what other people are doing to stand out is always incredibly helpful. Are there any really standout examples you've seen, either recently post COVID-19 or even prior to that as well?
Yeah, one actually just came to mind in looking back on our conversation about specifically how creatives can do work that's kind of outside of, your standard paid professional work. I recently hired someone into a marketing role that in this meantime, and I mean, the role opened near the time that this all kind of began for us all. We put out the offer to her fairly recently. But one thing that really struck me about her as I look back is she had been doing stuff in the meantime. She was working in kind of like a situation where she was volunteering her time and trying to do messaging and really leveraging her skills. And I don't know, it's one that really stuck with me. Not everybody has the opportunity to do those things. I think it's tough sometimes to tell people go out and find these incredible, enriching opportunities that are going to look great on your resume and give you this great experience. But that really stuck with me. It's on the flip side of that, I think it just has to be said. It's kind of like it's related. This also, you take time for you each and every day. I think that's for working people who are on the job search and affected by this so deeply, is that you don't have to, it's the meme that goes around. You don't have to write the next great novel. You don't have to fill your time with 40 hours of enrichment classes a week. A lot of this time has to be, you just kind of like dealing in your own way with everything that's going on a personal level.
No, it's really, really important. And we definitely hope that, right, everyone's taking time for themselves as well, and not putting too much pressure on themselves, right? Especially because we just know like everything is going to take longer, right? I'm glad, I think it was Israel who said it. Everyone here will get a job, you will, but there is a really good chance that it'll take longer than it might have otherwise, whether you're early in your career or looking for an internship or regardless of that. So it's very important to keep in mind. And Barry, what are some of your tips for how people can best talk about their experience when, you said confidence is really important, right? But when they maybe don't feel as confident as they could or should because it's not that exact type of experience, or for instance, many people this summer who were supposed to have internships will not have them because they got canceled. So maybe they don't, they have less experience than they wanted to get when they're going into a certain role. So I guess it's kind of a double question of confidence tips, like what you find will make people more confident, and how to talk about yourself when you're not, when you don't check every single box, on the list.
Well, you're not going to check every box, so don't put pressure on yourself. Even in a good economy, on a job description, you're going to do some things and not others. But it's very rare for you to be asked about something you never heard of. So the best way is lead with honesty. I've never used that programming language, but I know what it applies, how it applies. I know what it's used for. So you always want them to hear what you know last, not what you don't know. So lead with honesty and then what you do know. I say like macros. I've never used macros, but I know exactly what they're used for. So you see that. Now, in terms of being encouraging and confident, I have to share with everyone, I was in banking in 2008 when the market crashed. I was in an executive meeting and it felt like a funeral. And I have to tell you, it felt the same. When you're in it, it feels awful. But the next year, the market came back over 20%. And even in that market in 2008, we were still hiring selectively. So there were still positions, but we all came out of it. So as much as you're feeling this now, just have faith that it will end. The market will open up again. There will be jobs. As far as confidence, now's the time to become a little spiritual, meditation, yoga, and really get into your own head and remind yourself. I call it self-affirmations. It's an exercise. Just keep reminding yourself how smart you are. You have an excellent degree, the things you've accomplished in your life, what a good person you've been in life. Just keep reminding yourself of that. It's almost like brainwashing. And combine that with spirituality, which gives you that level of balance and confidence, because it has to be natural. So that's what I'd recommend as far as confidence. Self-affirmations, very, very powerful exercise.
That's great. Yeah. Well, it is 2:59, but like I said, our speakers, we're so grateful, will stay, and there's more questions we want to get to. So I'm going to do a little closing, but it's sort of a fake out closing because we will continue on probably till about at least 3:15. So if you have questions, please keep them going. Amber has been so great. She's sending to me them on the side. So I'm going to share some final notes if you have to go, but please stay on if you can, because our speakers will answer some more questions. So first of all, as I mentioned, I'm also a professor, and so I feel like I'm allowed to give homework, but really it's so important when you are inspired, when you have these great tips, please put them into action. And you want to make sure they are actionable goals, they are quantifiable goals where you can really show yourself progress, right? So just saying that you're going to get better at networking or you're going to get a job, those are so big, hairy, scary goals. You want to break those down, right? So going to more virtual events, sending thank you notes to people, reaching out to people before they attend. I'm just curious, did anybody connect with any of our speakers before this event on LinkedIn? I would love to know in the chat if you actually connected with anybody on this list before, because that's a great tip. You say, hey, Barry, I'm looking forward to hearing from you on the FindSpark panel. And that way you stand out, right? Because most people will not have done that. So set some goals for yourself based on what you learned to do. Also, if you could take a minute right now, there's 250 of you in this audience. Some of you are probably already following us, but could you take out your phone right now and give FindSpark a follow? We're really close to 23,000 followers. If all of you followed us, we would get to 23,000 followers. Now, I try not to be a vanity metrics person, but I can't help it. But we post really good tips here, some good affirmations like Barry mentioned, but also some really good actionable tips. We promise we will make your FindSpark or your Instagram newsfeed more productive. So please give us a follow right now if you enjoyed this event, and also DM our profile to friends who you think would benefit from this type of programming and advice as well. We also have a Facebook group, so you can join that, and it's a great place to meet other people, to ask questions, and again, also just to get updated in terms of what programs we have going on and what resources we have created. So give us an ad there, and also just to kind of give you some keywords to think about during this time especially. I think being empathetic, being creative, resilient, and flexible, these are all things that are super important right now. And I think if we keep these keywords top of mind, if we keep these things in mind when we're interacting with everybody, it will really help us all out. Thank you. If you have to jump off, we appreciate you being here. Kudos to you for being here. But again, please stay on if you're able to, because we're going to flip back to the panel and continue asking some questions. So Israel, I want to flip it to you next. So we know that a lot of internship programs have been canceled. And so I'm curious if you have suggestions specifically for the college students in the audience who maybe are banking on a certain internship and are now, sort of losing that like official time of experience. Like, what can they do to sort of make up for that? Or just what are your sort of general suggestions for college students in this time?
Yeah, I mean, there's, if your internship was affected, or I know there's a number of internships that have been canceled across so many organizations, but there are still at the same time so many other opportunities to volunteer time, to learn and sharpen your skills. A couple of them we've already spoken about, but take the summer to be able to do that. Like, this is a very rare opportunity as a college student right now to have these types of resources that otherwise would not be available pre-COVID, so to speak.
And I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, I'll bring on Josh just in case, but would either of you be open to just talking about tips for international students, if you've specifically dealt with hiring international students who need visas or are looking for visas? We do have a lot of international students in the audience, and they have a unique set of challenges. So do you have any particular thoughts or tips on what international students can do and how to handle things during this time?
Yeah, Josh, go ahead. All I was going to say was, at the same time, it comes down to really crafting out your resume. Find organizations that would be willing to sponsor your particular sponsorship, but really crafting out your resume in order to do so. In general, right now, the courts are pretty slow in terms of approving visas in general. So
and I mean, not only are the courts slow, I mean the process in general, and kind of like the willingness for the administration to kind of push through these things is historically difficult at this time. It was that way even before COVID, and so I hate to say patience, but it's a lot of patience with the people that you're working with, just from an administrative standpoint, because we get it. I mean, as a recruiter, there's nothing I want more than, to keep that process moving and moving quickly. The immigration team at my company is the same way, but really just being super available and attentive to what your part, what your aspect is to it. Just it's a tough time for that, and I think it's even tougher here in the circumstances we're in.
And I would love if each of you, and then I'll flip it to Sacsha as well, could share if you have a specific example of something that you've seen someone do with their online presence, so with their website, with a Twitter account, an Instagram account, something specifically that people did on social media that was really impressive, that helped them land a job, or maybe potentially also just kind of get a leg up if they had a job. Maybe they did something really interesting while they were employed and that helped them get like recognition or promotion or anything like that.
Yeah, the ones that I've seen that have generated a lot of traffic on LinkedIn postings when there were cases of employees being furloughed, that particular employee would be incredibly transparent about their experience at the company, very thoughtful about their experience there, and would be very transparent. Like, I was part of this layoff, and it's not a shame to be part of a layoff or to be furloughed, because there's over 20 million across the country who are in that position. So a lot of those posts have generated a lot of likes and interest from companies who are actively recruiting. I've personally have taken a look at a number of those, and I'm like, hey, actually, this person would be really good. Let me pass them over to another recruiter who's focused on that particular part of the business. I would say those types of posts have they not only like generate a lot of sentiment, but it's really great to take a look at their background.
And my offering would be to kind of
peers
piggyback on that. I saw there was a question in the chat that I just couldn't type fast enough. But to answer the question, how important is that LinkedIn profile? I mean, I feel like I've been whacking this horse with a bat for my entire career, but it is important. It's something that I look at. It's something recruiters look at. Put a picture there, make it classy. I don't want to see your duck lips. Like, it should be. It's a representation of you. And I'm always shocked at how people who haven't taken the time. It's so intuitive and easy to kind of cultivate that very basic, professional social media presence. Just do it and make sure it's thorough. Like, I want to know what you're doing. And to Israel's point, I mean, you get to tell a story in that entire headline profile section. What were you up to before you hit these times? And just kind of represent yourself in the way you want to be represented. It's literally the second thing I look at after your resume.
Great. And Sacsha, yeah, so for you, things that you've seen specifically people do creatively with an online presence, a website, LinkedIn, Instagram, anything like that?
I have to agree with what was said. Israel really hit the nail on the head. I feel we're in a time right now, especially where people are getting more personal. And they're willing to open up their lives to the world. And I feel that there's other people out there that might have been a little reluctant to do that are more open to do it themselves. And it's creating interesting dialect where people are ended up connecting with people who might be in the same boat. Like, for instance, if they got laid off, hey, I got laid off too. And they're able to, hey, I'm creative, you're creative, let's come together and actually do something. So to me, it's really generating a new, I want to say, a new movement with just being open and honest and creating new opportunities to just create seats at tables, make your own table at the end of the day. So even if that turns into being your own job function or your own business, whatever it turns out to be, it's a very interesting time right now.
Yeah. That's great. And Barry, we like to be optimists here at FindSpark, but I am curious, since you've coached so many people, what are the biggest mistakes that you see people making in interviews?
Well, one is before the interview, people have to realize anyone they're interacting with matters. So even someone that is just setting up the interview, you still want to be sharp because that feedback gets back. So don't let your guard down. Even when you show up, the receptionist was always the first person I asked what she thought of the candidates. So don't make that mistake. And you want to be, as I was saying before, you don't want to be stiff and robotic. You want to relate back to the job description. You want to avoid rambling and make sure that you're really on target talking about the job. And one of the biggest mistakes is to talk too much about themselves and make it all about them. It's about the company. So the company manager, the interviewer may say, well, we're working on this and that. And the candidate will go, oh, I've done that. And they start talking about themselves again. So try and stay on point. Demonstrate what you can do for the company. Okay. And one of the biggest things I could tell, especially entry level, is to have commercial knowledge. Very important. If you really want to stand out, a lot of people don't know, how does the company make money? It's the most important thing to them. And every person contributes to that, even if you're an admin assistant. So you have to go in knowing how are you going to contribute to making them money. If any of us owned a startup, we interviewed a candidate, and the candidate said, I'm going to make you boatloads of money, and here's how. Don't you think that would get your attention? So have that knowledge about how the company makes money and how you can contribute to that. And those are some of the best guidance. I mean, there's small things people forget. Don't wear any perfume or cologne. These are just minor details that I had a manager, all he talked about was how the perfume was so annoying. So those are just basic mistakes that people make.
Do you actually, so, you know, perfume not being as relevant anymore since we're all virtual, but do you have any different tips or suggestions? Like we did get a question from somebody in advance about, you know, what to wear on video interviews. Like, is anything sort of changed? You know, like we would have recruiters say, oh, you know, don't be afraid to ask your recruiter what the dress code is. And now like people are working from home. So you think people should still ask what the dress code is?
I would ask, because they want to show that you can think for yourself. And it's not complicated. Just be more formal than less formal. You can't go wrong being more formal, okay? And even when we're interviewing in person, you know, people look up, oh, the company is casual day every day. But you're a candidate. You don't work there yet. And so also look online, see what their pictures of their executives, what are they wearing in the photos? That'll give you an idea of what they wear. But always better, more formal is always safest, to be on the safe side. Yeah. Great. And make sure your hair and everything, don't wear a lot of jewelry. Don't wear anything distracting. That's a.
So keep it more simple.
But if you're in the creative, like the fashion industry, maybe one piece and just one piece, or subtle earrings or something. Yeah. Yeah. Well, great.
So as we get a bit past 3 o'clock, I would love if everyone could share just, you know, sort of one final thought, maybe one big tip that you feel like you haven't gotten out yet, something that you feel like is important for job seekers to keep in mind, or just important for everyone to keep in mind, because, you know, even if folks aren't looking for a job, like there's just so much up in the air. You know, we did a poll about, you know, sort of most people here are looking for a job actively and are unemployed, but even for folks who are maybe employed, would love to get kind of a closing comment or thought from everybody on what people can do to best position themselves in this environment. Yeah. So Barry, we'll start with you since you're
network effectively. And just remember, networking is cultivating relationships. So when you're networking, it's not about you asking them for something. It's 50-50. Try and find things you can do for them, even if they're, so make sure that you network as a 50-50 mutually beneficial relationship. It's not just about them helping you. So that's some advice I can give on networking. Yeah.
That's great. And I'll actually just add a comment to that. I'm going to bring you on, Israel, next. Is I think some people will get overwhelmed about the idea of, well, what do I have to give if I'm just a college student or I'm unemployed and this person is so much more experienced than I am, et cetera, you know, all the self-loathing things. Keep in mind that, you know, you're all talented and you have great things to offer, and people want to help other people who are talented. One, because it feels good, and you know, just in general, and two, because if you refer someone, you know, why do companies love referrals? Because it makes them easy to make a choice, right? And see that somebody's great. And everybody loves referring talented people. If you can say, oh yeah, I got you that awesome designer, intern, whoever it is. So that's number one. And number two, one of the best things you can do for someone who you feel like has mentored you or has given you their time and expertise is to let them know that you actually did what they said. To let them know that you actually took that advice, right? So you've gotten so much advice here, right? So one of the best things you could do to say follow up with people here, I'm giving you like a cheat sheet, right? Is say, hey, Israel, you know that you know, professional development program you mentioned? I actually finished it last week and it was so helpful. Like, thank you so much for that advice, right? And there's no ask there. There's no even expectation of response, but it's a good chance Israel will read that and be like, damn, a lot of people don't actually, you know, finish that or do it all the way through. So if you can, that is such an incredible way to follow up with people, is to just say, hey, I took that advice. Thank you so much. It was so helpful. So Israel, what's one parting piece of advice you'd like to share with folks?
Yeah, one thing that I talk to candidates about prior to their video interviews are, it's really about, despite the market being what it is and their particular situation, if they are employed or unemployed, but interviewing in general is a very hard skill. It's a tough skill. Now we have a barrier of doing it virtually. Like I said, there's a couple of video interviewing tips that Bear and I shared, but also just remember to have fun. Have fun, enjoy yourself, enjoy the opportunity to network with someone. You have 30, 45 minutes, however long the conversation is set for, to create a rapport with this other person. You may not be right for the role today, but a month from now, a year from now, there could be an opportunity that comes up. Have fun and be yourself is something that I tell everyone.
Very great, thank you. All right, Sacsha, I'm gonna bring you on next. And I just want to echo on that as well. For everyone to, right, it might seem tougher to be able to connect with people, but more people now are available than they may have been before. And of course, that's not to say a lot of people are less available as well. Like maybe now they have kids and there's no childcare, and so they're balancing a lot more than they were before. But also a lot of people are more open to connecting with folks maybe than they were before. A lot of people are being more empathetic maybe than they have ever been before. Mm-hmm. So you shouldn't stop reaching out to people who you'd like to network with. But you will likely need to be more patient and a bit more persistent. But you still want to take that approach of, if you have a person you want to reach out to for a real great reason and authentically send a really nice message to them that's clear it's for them and not just for anyone, people are likely to answer if you do it enough. Sacsha, what's one of your closing tips that you have?
Yes, thank you. If I didn't say it before, this is sort of to piggyback off of some things that were said earlier. I believe Barry had brought it up, which I totally agree with. Don't ignore yourself right now. It all starts with self and your mental and where you are right now. And I am learning this even myself. It's getting up, it's meditating every morning, because we're in a situation where we can't necessarily leave and go where we want to go. And it can be a little bit hard, mentally. So I would say whatever it is, whether you exercise, you meditate, you pray, whatever your forte is, do that. I have a son, 4-year-old. I haven't spent so much time in my life with him because he was in daycare when I was working. Now having him around even brings me joy. So finding little joys in life, I would say, and taking that time for yourself is definitely important. Use those times to reflect. Really reflect on what you want next, whether you're in a situation or not. It's like, what do you want out of your next experience? What do you want going back to that job that you might be in, that you want the culture to change, that you're learning out of where you're working right now? And set your goals, really set your goals, spend some time to do that, and be creative. To all my creatives out there, this is the time, especially if you are about to graduated already. Continue to create as much as you can, because you never remember with school, it was like you're under all these deadlines. Now you don't have a deadline. Take that time to really go and get inspired as much as you can. I understand you can't go to the museums and whatnot, but it's like whatever online research you can do, walking in the parks, get out virtually, and just get inspired as much as you can, and really add some good work to your portfolio.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sacsha.
No problem.
All right, Josh.
Yeah.
So your closing tips for us.
I think, as they were saying, we're rooting for you. I think that you should remember every time, along with the idea of having fun, is that the next person I speak with, I want them to be perfect for the job. So the people who are on the other side of that camera now, you're not walking into the door. I would usually say the next person that walks in the door, I want them to get this job. I'm the next person who shows up on the camera or the phone. But I think something more tangible that we can remember, even in light of taking the time for ourselves and for our families and what we need to do from a personal obligation standpoint, is being accessible and being ready. It's been kind of amazing to me a few times over these last few weeks that occasionally candidates have been a little bit difficult to get in touch with. I don't always mean like being ready for my phone call. Make sure that your contact info is everywhere I can find it, that you're comfortable with, within your own privacy kind of rules. But not having your phone number, or not phone number nowadays, but your email on a resume, it happens more often than you could think. So just double check that the people that need to reach out to you and get in touch with you can, because things are happening pretty fast now. We've been turning around hiring in this climate. We've been hiring people in like 2 to 3 weeks, which is kind of like wild for me to think of just prior to this, just because things are moving so quickly. So be ready, stay ready. As I say, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Yeah, take care of yourselves and remember that we're all rooting for you and you do a good job.
I love that. What an easy action item to just go to every social media profile that you use professionally and just put your email in that bio, right? Put it right in the summary of your LinkedIn, which should be at the top. Put it in your Instagram bio. If maybe you're creative, use it professionally, or your Twitter account, make it as easy as possible for people to find you. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Can we give a round of applause to all of our panelists? I'm going to bring you each on camera one more and I'll just say hi. We really, really appreciate everyone's time during this. You should connect with these folks, use the tips that they gave you, keep in mind everything that they said to you during this event. Take this, make it actionable, and please, please connect with each other. So if you didn't already, copy and paste what your intro was in the beginning, share it again. I'm going to leave up this chat a little bit more so that you guys can kind of scroll up, and if there are other people who you wanted to connect with, which you want to go find their LinkedIn, you can do that. We will be sharing the recording of this as well, so Sacsha and Barry can say hello and goodbye one more time. So we will be sharing this presentation via email, and the next couple of days you will be able to get access to that as well. And we also have a survey. We would really, really love your feedback, your ideas. We take our surveys super seriously. We read everything. All constructive feedback is welcome, especially in this time. We want to do whatever we can to create resources and programs that will be beneficial to you. So please fill out that survey when you can. Give FindSpark a follow. We would love your support. The best thing that you can do if you enjoy this event is tell a friend about FindSpark. Send them an email, forward an email you got from us, DM them our Instagram account. The more our community grows, the more we'll be able to offer to you and do some really great do great things with folks like our panelists today and really incredible employers as well. So thank you so much, everybody. We really look forward to continuing to see you at a future FindSpark event. We would love to hear about the action items that you completed because of this event. So connect with me as well. I am Emily Miethner on LinkedIn. It's very easy to get in touch with me. And kudos to you for being here today and taking a step forward in your professional development. So thank you, everyone, again, so much for being here. We look forward to seeing you at a future event.